Ready to roll? Good? Okay. All right, I'm going to call the December 10th, 2024 Finance and General Government Committee meeting to order. Excuse me. Present, we have Councilmember Brennan, Councilmember Delarada, Councilmember McPartland, Councilmember Moskowitz. We also have our new, very exciting Kara Parks Comptroller and Janet Wynn, our Assistant Comptroller, as well as our Deputy Supervisor, Joe Drescher. Let me see if I have everyone else. We have Diane Percy. We have our Town Attorney Finnan. We have, no, Michelle is not here. We have our Director of IT, Josh Panisha. Eric is not here. We have Ray Smith. We have Jordan Koshan. And we have Matt. Did I say your name? Matt Yeto. Okay. And Laura. Where? Oh my gosh. And Laura. I know I'm losing it here. And forgive me because my voice may go out in the middle of this, so I apologize. This is actually the best it's been in like 2.5 weeks. So we're going to roll with it and see what happens. All right. So we do not have minutes, correct? All right. So we're going to do those next month. Okay. So we can jump right into items for action.
My apologies on the minutes. Dottie did get them to me, but I was having technical difficulties at home on Saturday getting things posted. And with Josh's help, we were able to get the agenda posted. And I completely forgot about the minutes because I was so excited my computer started working again. So I will get those out and we will do double minute approvals next month. Our first item is a discussion regarding certain budgetary modifications. You guys hear me say this every year. It's the end of the year. You know, we're going to be doing probably a lot of budget modifications between December and whenever I get the year closed. Probably, I'm hoping for mid-February. It could be as late as late March, depending on what we have outstanding. Our next item is approval to pay 3 annual software license agreement for electric vehicle charging stations. This is for Laura's department. This is an annual. It's stayed flat. It's $1,200 per charging station each year. That does need finance approval, so you all have to vote on that.
Do I just do that vote?
Yep.
So we need a motion.
If there's any discussion.
Is there any discussion? We talked about this in Laura's meeting, and I think one of the areas that we could target for the solar credits that the county gives out is this account in particular, because I feel like if we could get a little bit of an offset on how much we're paying for the software, it might make the charging, it would make me feel better about the charging stations, because I think we weren't expecting the software to be as expensive as it is, and it's lovely to have them, but it would be also great if we could use the county solar credits toward the actual national grid bill in order to offset this $3,600, but it stayed the same. Are there any other questions on it? Okay. Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Next, we have a resolution to authorize Ref Telus to conduct a water and sewer rate study proposal, and I'm going to ask the supervisor to speak to that.
Yes, so I've been talking about this for, I think at almost every meeting. I'm pretty excited for this. I think that this company, I wish that they had been around a couple of years ago preemptively. However, we are where we are, and we're going to have these folks look over the work that our previous comptroller did on the rates. But not only that, they're going to be helping us with some longer term planning to make sure that we are actually meeting the revenue requirement necessary in order to run both water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant, and also to maintain the infrastructure for sewer one. So right now, the way the contract reads, it's up to $30,000. So that's $10,000 for each of the different funds. I would imagine that the work for sewer 6 might be a little bit more detailed than, let's say, sewer 1. There's going to be a bit more infrastructure needs. They'll probably need some more data from us. So I'd imagine that one might get up close to that $10,000, but there's a chance that these other ones won't be as expensive. Other things that might add to the cost is how much we want to use them for community input, helping us to run public meetings to share information, and some other things that they had offered up. They're not included in this package right now, but they're things we can talk about if, as we get closer, if we think that that would be helpful for us. So I'm very excited about this. I think I've talked to you guys about this quite a bit, and I thought the scope of services he sent over was awesome and just all inclusive of the things that we need. So All in favor?
There was also a
Oh, yeah.
time frame on this contract, correct?
So
Steve, I read through it, and I'm looking at it quickly now, so maybe you can elaborate further
yeah,
on that.
so we kind of have a choice in this, and we could go rapid fire and try to get this rate study completed pretty quickly as long as we're able to get the information over to him. But I don't know how much time it's going to take. I don't think it's going to take forever, but we should be able to get the data over. The thing that might stretch the timeline out is that we as a community need to figure out the type of rates that we're comfortable with. And we do have some options. On top of that, I really would like, the community to come in and kind of have an information share so that they can sort of see where all of their dollars are going and the kinds of issues that erupt on a daily basis for our sewer and water department. So they have a connection and some contextual knowledge as to what all of this money goes toward. So I think there's value in that. I think that we're also right in the middle of a rate cycle. So we could hurry it up, but we're not going to change the rates mid-cycle. We would change them for the following cycle. So I do think we could spread it out a little bit if we wanted to. More community input, more meetings. So we kind of have some options there.
What
We
is
can talk through
90
it.
days in the contract?
So that was me saying, how quickly can you do this? And he was saying, if we add in a lot of those community meetings, it's going to stretch it out because typically the meetings would be like once a month. And we would want a series of meetings, not necessarily just one. But he did put that in there. So if we wanted a quick turnaround and we wanted to fire it up and get it going, the only benefit I could see to doing it quickly that way is if we were able to very quickly change over our billing system to where our billing cycle wouldn't necessarily be every 6 months. I don't see that happening in 90 days. It's like, I really want to make sure we do this right because we're not going to want to revisit creating a new billing structure more than once in 10 years, I would think. So we want to make sure we're doing that right. If there's no reason for us to rush, I would rather have more community input. I think that there's a group of organizations that have been billed excessively, and I'm going to be working with just that group separate from this conversation. It impacts really, and I've said this before, some of our churches, benevolent associations, some other entities that are worthy of sort of a rate analysis before this. But I want to discuss that with them so that I'm not screwing up any work that they're trying to do while creating a model that we can use for years to come. So we do have some decisions to make. Anyone that wants to be involved in those conversations with John from Raftellus, please let me know. I'm happy to include you. So we have the option of going very quickly or spreading it out over a few months.
So the 90 days would be the long,
No, that's the short.
that's the short.
Yes.
Well, they're going to be looking for information from us.
They need a
lot
lot
of
of
information
information.
from us initially. And then is there going to be a subsequent, mid-meeting, if you will, how things going, where things?
I think
we're
there'll
at?
probably be more than one. There'll probably be several for a couple of different reasons because not only, so in order for us to come up with a rate that makes sense for us and so that we're not experiencing rate changes that are all over the place, we really want to be planning, we really want some serious long-term planning.
Mhm.
And the reality is that our infrastructure is old and we are putting Band-Aids on it right now. And we really should be planning to replace the things that need to be replaced. We don't have the money to do that now, but we should be setting some of that money aside. And we want to make it so that the rate, this was obviously a year that we saw, a lot of folks saw a decent increase in their bills. We don't want that to keep happening. We want people to have some sort of expectation about what things are going to be for the following year and maybe the year after that. So they're going to help us with that. But in order to do that, we need to know what is the age of our infrastructure? When were these water mains put in? What kind of material do the water mains have? What were they built with so that we know how quickly they're going to deteriorate? What could we expect to have fail on us probably before we can replace it? And how do we address that with, reserving some money for repairs? So these are the kinds of things that'll take a little bit of time, but I really feel will be valuable in longer term planning because I feel like I had a conversation with a resident today and she said, I feel like we're very reactionary, and we are, particularly in this department because we don't have enough money to fix the things that we need to fix. So that's sort of why I think it might take a little bit more time.
It's been I've said it a lot, planning, 5
Planning,
years. We
for
need
sure.
5-year budgeting, not 1-year budgeting.
Yes.
We need 5-year budgeting.
So I agree. And this is an area where we can project with reasonable, with like a reasonable amount of, what's the word I'm looking for? Accuracy, because we have a decent idea about what's going to fail. And we know how many water breaks we have in a given year. I think the only thing that's up in the air, and I'm hoping you're watching Schenectady, would be the price of water that we still have to figure out. So more to come on that. But if we could maybe lock them into an agreement that makes sense, that maybe we would be able to more accurately project what it would be. But either way, we don't have things that we need, and one of them is a long-term plan. So we need to start now.
I
So
think
that's
this
kind of where
will
I'm at.
open us up to some additional funding as well. I know we've already secured some funding from the state and through our wonderful Assemblyman Stack.
Yep.
They can incorporate that into this, and hopefully that will open doors to more funding for infrastructure. Water tower needs a lot of work, and possibly money for water rate influx. So I think this will go a long way in not only analyzing what we have in the short term and long term, but getting some funding to move that stuff along.
That's a really good point, because there are a lot of infrastructure funds, both at the federal level and the state level. Some of them have just come out really in the last few weeks, and let's try to get what we can. Some of it is efficiency grants, which would be purchasing water from another entity. Maybe we'll look at that. So,
Do
yeah.
is Reftelis going to come to us with like one recommendation or one study or one?
oh, that's a
report?
good
Or is it
good
gonna be,
question.
like, several, so like they're going to look at our water rates, and then once we have a solution or a recommendation, they'll look at the infrastructure. Or is it going to be all one large report that?
It will be like 3 mini reports into one large report, but I would imagine that,
but they'll all
like I
talk to
said,
each other.
yeah, well, they all sort of, like Sewer 1 and Sewer 6, we really have to isolate them to some extent because they're different funds. We're not crossing money between the funds, and they all have their own set of issues, right? So it makes sense
So-
for us to do kind of like mini projects, same
Sort of
approach, but
Separate from each other though, where we could look at the water rates, they could bring us a recommendation,
Mhm.
we could accept their recommendation or whatever we decide to do, and then look at the infrastructure after that and do it in like mini parts.
yes, but I don't know if we can't really do the rate analysis like upfront for,
Like
let's say, like
infrastructure.
Sewer 6, because we really need to look at the infrastructure to
Right.
see what kind of money we need to bring in. The things that they would come to us with are basically sets of rates that we can use. They'll say, these are the rates that will get you to this revenue requirement, which is what we would need to long-term plan and to cover our expenses for the year. Those rates are based on kind of it should be based on really like the community's input on what we want to do with our rates. There are sets of rates where we can help to offset costs for lower income families. There are ways that potentially we can, help seniors. There's a way that we can just make them as absolutely fair as possible. There's no caps. If you're using this is what your cost is, and just try to get them as fair as possible. There's a bunch of different ways to do the rate setting. And so that's where I'm sort of feeling like the community input will be helpful, because that's what we need. We need to know what everybody wants to do with these rates.
So 90 days seems like a very aggressive timeline to do.
Oh, I don't want to do it in 90
Yeah, no,
days.
that's-
I'm
that's-
putting that in there because I know this is an issue that needs to get wrapped up. But my thought is that we need to extend it out a
If it
little
takes
bit.
6 months or whatever it takes, as long as we do it the right way.
Yeah.
That regardless of how long it takes, so that 30,000 is still the up to amount at all.
Unless we decide to add in other, like folks that come in to help us with communication and with meetings but that's kind of that's the separate contract that I brought to the committee meeting.
But as far as what's in the proposal,
It is what it
30,000,
is.
regardless of how long it takes us.
Yes. He said you probably want to drag it out a little bit because things will crop up. You'll
Yeah.
be like, oh gosh, what about this part of things or that part of things? It helps to kind of get a more full picture if we do take a little bit of time. But I'm saying my goal is to make sure that it's done for us to adjust the rates for the second part of the year.
So it'd be done in time for the fall billing cycle.
It would be done in time for the spring 26 billing cycle
Sorry,
because
right.
because the rates would change in July, and then the July to December would be billed the following year. So I know right now if we change them, and I actually got a call back from the comptroller about that question that I keep bothering everybody with to see if we can retroactively change rates. So I have a conversation with him. It's more to come on that, but we don't necessarily want to retroactively change the rates if we don't know what we're changing them to. So we just kind of have to wait. If we can retroactively change them during that time period and bill it out for, let's say we get it done in the spring and we want to do that and we're able to do that. That's what I'm sort of trying to figure out here. That's something we can all decide. But as of right now, we really kind of have until the end of June to change them for the following billing cycle, if that makes sense.
I think we need to get some preliminary information before we retroactively start changing things.
Right. I need for them to look at our stuff.
Right.
You know, I want to give them all of our stuff. I mean, it's not that we don't have analysis. Actually, the gentleman who came in and spoke with us about this project said that the way she described her analysis, he sat through the 17-minute presentation, made sense to him. So for all I know, I'm going to give him this analysis that she did, and he'll say, geez, you know, aside from this particular bucket of folks, I think this rate makes sense for the residential side. I mean, that is,
You don't know, right?
you don't,
won't
I
know
really
until
don't
they do
know.
it.
I mean, we're assuming they're wrong because everybody hates them, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong. So this is where we have to start. We have to let somebody on the outside of this issue look at everything. And that's where I'm suggesting we start.
Start?
What do you think?
Yes.
So
Okay.
we don't need a resolution?
That's on-
Okay. Fabulous. So we'll have this talk again next week.
Okay, next we have a resolution for a managed services agreement for CB20 for 2025 at a rate of $34,392. I don't know if the supervisor or if IT is going to discuss that.
Why don't we both do it? So this is an old issue that we are struggling to try to find a solution for. And I think we threw around the idea of hiring a part-time person to help with in-house IT. We have one IT person for all of the town. It is not enough. It's, in my opinion, a dangerous thing to have because if something happens to Josh or he needs to go out on leave for any reason, we are not in good shape. And we, you know, there are Saturdays that he's here for 8 hours at a time working on things because he's too busy doing help desk tickets, helping people with their printers and logins and things like that. My thought is that if we hire somebody, we probably would have to hire somebody full-time, which would obviously be more money. It would be tough for us to find a part-time person to do just this work. And let's say we do hire somebody for full-time. Now we're kind of like married into that whole thing. And we're going to feel like we have to keep them around. And then that human will inevitably be part of increases in health insurance and a retirement. And this is a way for us to solve a problem, at least a small part of the problem, without being married to this particular solution. So I don't think that the folks in town hall love the idea of not having a human here to help, but we're going to do a really nice orientation to try to get everybody on board with virtual help desk.
Yeah, and on the last topic, you know, the thing, I think Bill brought it up, we need to come up with like a 5-year plan. We don't have one for IT. Everything's very reactive, not to pivot off the last person. You know, something breaks and I'm trying to get the duct tape out. We don't have a plan for things, which is kind of concerning and frustrating because no one likes to think about IT until nothing works. Then it's a big deal, right? Just some other quick talking points. We do still have a retainer with CB20 that we paid for during the lapse of an IT person. There's $9,600 in there. We can use that to pay for a couple months of this if we choose to. So the actual cost that we wrote on the agenda would be down a little bit if we wanted to use that money. It doesn't go anywhere. We can keep it in our back pocket regardless. And then back to what I was talking about, this will free me up in my job description, which is to like, you know, come up with the plan and guide the ship and do all those other things for the department to, you know, there's a lot of pain points in town hall. Like, I don't think we're leveraging Munis like we could. Aaron and I and Julie talked with our Munis rep, and there's a lot of things like that we can turn on or maybe explore, like online payment processing and things of that nature that might benefit our town and our, you know, community out. Because, you know, people have to come in here and write a check and pay their water bill. Kind of silly.
And we know.
You know?
Well, no, you can, but you're capped at, well, it used to be 500. Now you're capped at $1,000. And we would have to pay even more money to bring that over the threshold with the processor that we're using.
Yeah. And if I'm being honest, everyone, right now it's manageable. my coworkers that I know that work in IT that I've either worked with in the past or I still talk to, they cross their eyes because there's 104 computers, not counting servers, and I'm the only one doing everything. And everyone goes, "You don't have any help?" I said, "Nope, I don't." And I did reach out to some other towns, like the town of Guilderland is similar to our size. They have a bigger footprint geographically, but they're around the same amount of people and employees. They have a director of IT and 2 helpers, so it's a little bit there. I'm managing it now just fine, but I'm also not in the middle of any projects. We just bought 50 workstations. They're sitting in the basement. There's a couple reasons why that is. One, I'm afraid to get into anything because if something breaks, then I have to pivot and switch and I forget where I left off and all these other things. Also next year, we have a plan to replace our 8-year-old servers. That's going to take up a lot of my time and be disruptive. If anyone's gone through a new server at a job in the past, they know the first day or 2 kind of stinks. You're waiting for sometimes the IT guy to come and reconnect you to the file share and things of that nature. Everyone's going to be waiting just for me, the whole town. It's just like kind of stuff like that. So yeah, those are all my little notes. Did anyone have any questions or want any more information?
I'll say this makes me very nervous to only have one person and not have help for you for all the reasons you stated. And I feel like investment in IT is what we need for our future. We will shut down if we don't have IT. If something happens to you, if you win the lottery and move to Hawaii, we would have no one who knows our system. And that's scary because all our departments, the whole town runs on IT.
Yeah. And, not to dredge up, some like in the past, but that kind of happened to the town a couple months ago. And I think it was painful for everyone that was working back there. I wasn't, but,
It was stressful.
This would be a third party. They would have all of our stuff, and God forbid something like that happens again. You guys would be in a good spot to be able to figure it out, like either find a good person to replace me if I left and hit the lottery or whatever happened. And there wouldn't be like a rush to just get the first warm body in, or, just do general day and stuff like make new email addresses, which you guys couldn't do for a while there and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Josh, can you just elaborate a little bit on, I guess, how much time, I know it's probably hard to say, but an estimate on how much time you spend per day on the types of tasks that CB20 could take over for you, and then what that would free you up to, what other tasks you would be doing during that time?
Sure. On a daily basis, I'm not too sure because that's kind of like an ebb and a flow. But
Right.
If I had to just like pull a number out of my hat for a week, I'd say it's about 10 hours of my time every week. So, you work 40 hours a week, it's a quarter of my time. Some days you go through 2 or 3 days where not much is going on, but other times, like I got woken up at 7:45 Monday morning because the thing was beeping in the closet at the senior center, which is fine. But, that just, then I have to come in, figure that out. Maybe I start my day there and not here. Did I have to do some department head type stuff Monday morning, like get my, bills paid to Janet and all these other things? Like that takes me away from doing the admin-y type stuff.
Janet gets thrown in.
It's always Janet's fault.
It is.
Well, I was also thinking you often get interrupted. So let's say you're like elbow deep in a server project and somebody's printer doesn't work. You have to stop what you're doing. And then,
Right.
so I know for me, if I get into something like that, I need to be like, I'm much more efficient if I can stay on one thing at a time.
So, Jason, we did I asked for this a couple different ways. We did explore, honestly, just getting a part-time tech lease from them, like 8 hours a week type of thing. And it's offensive. It's over
It's so
$4,000 a
expensive.
month.
Yeah.
And that would just be like, you get them Tuesday, Thursday from 8 to noon every day, all those 2 days. And
That was
whatever.
a part-time
That was a human.
from CB20, though. They staff.
They would take one of their staff members, or they would hire somebody for us to
and
just
they
do
would be
that
here
job.
2 days a week.
And what's that?
And that person would be here 2 days a week.
4 hours, 2 days.
But
Yeah.
it's almost double the price of this version of it, which is, and like Aaron said earlier, it's not like in a perfect world what I would want, but I think it's a good kind of meet everyone in the middle.
Yeah.
Also, this isn't like a contract with any sort of term. So if we try it out for a year, Aaron and I and the rest of the people, we get like a good plan together and we think we're in a good spot moving forward. I'm more than happy to talk about going back to being a one-man band. I
And I
don't think
feel like
it's appropriate, but
Yeah.
you know, it's something that's definitely, I'm willing to.
Yeah, I think nobody thinks this is the perfect solution, but we have to do something. And I'm every day that we don't do something, I'm worried about the other, like when the other shoe is going to drop. Plus, we have a lot of IT. We're really behind in our IT investments.
There's also a lot of stuff kind of like half working too. You know, like Matt walked into my office the other day and talked about some fleet management software I had no idea about, and we half set it up, but no one's using it. And where are we at with that? And
I know they're projects you
so
can't
that
get
hit my
to.
radar too. You know, so it's just like a series of things like that.
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So for the like the helpline or whatever it is it just like a phone call type, like a hotline type thing, or will they have remote access to the computers too?
Remote access, you would have to say allow. It's similar to how we have now. It's called an RMM is what that platform's called in the IT guy world. We would remove ours, which we also would save $5,600
forgot
bucks a
about
year
that.
on. We pay for that. And we would leverage theirs, which is included in this price. I would have full admin access, so we wouldn't lose anything from my point of view on that. And it would be the same thing. You know, if you needed help in your office, you would there's 3 ways to get a hold of them. You can either hit a little button by your clock on your computer, make a ticket that way. You can go to the website and make a ticket. They have like a portal, or you can email them, or you can pick up the phone and call, I think. No one calls people anymore.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I call lots of people.
If somebody here in town hall does submit a ticket or calls the 1-800 number, whatever it may be, are you notified of that?
Yep. I would see all that stuff. It would be like I have a whole IT department under me at that rate. And they do a lot of other stuff too, Jason. Like they could give us metrics. They could help us plan for the future, you know, and say, here's what the industry's trending. You know, these are what we're seeing other towns do. They're involved in a couple other towns in our area, so they kind of know the lay of the land, you know, what other towns are doing. So,
Yeah.
you know, it might be another avenue for me to kind of spitball an idea like, you know, what do you guys use for water billing software? And, you know, do you
We
have
actually
good
did that.
success with it, types of stuff.
Are you familiar with any other local municipalities or companies that have a similar number of employees or similar amount of IT equipment that use this service?
I know Rotterdam uses them. I don't know.
Rotterdam uses CB20.
Yes. Just because the rep had told me. And then there's
They had
another
a
place
yeah,
out west.
They had a couple. I could have them send a list of
Yeah.
references if you want. That might be helpful.
Yeah.
They have a lot of contacts in municipalities through even short-term projects that they've done with folks. So they are very well versed in our needs. Oh, and we also didn't mention they would take care of onboarding anybody new that starts. So that would take that off of his plate too. They could like get them set up with their emails and make sure their calendars are set up, show them all of this, that. It's basically just all of the like routine things that he does, we can kind of offload on them.
Obviously, if this happens, I'm not going to like lock my door and black out my windows in my
Yeah,
office
right.
and just hunker down and do whatever IT guys do behind closed doors. You know, I'm always here. This just is like pressure release or a little bit of
Security.
feeling good, you know, like being able to dig into stuff because
Maybe
right.
getting some of those 50 workstations out of the
Exactly.
basement.
Yeah, exactly, John. And then, you know, next year we have some plans for some project work. And like I said earlier, like I can manage it now, but if I'm working all weekend to do stuff disruptive, then I come in and then you know what hits the fan and blah, blah, blah. So it's definitely, it's a lot, I think. And we have explored a couple different ways to try to make this happen. And I think this is one of the better solutions. I would prefer to have an employee, just because that's with like how the town operates. You know, we like to knock on a door, get someone, and shake hands, get to know them. You know, they're probably related to 5 people here, like that type of thing. But I don't think right now that's something that we're gonna, you know,
We just don't have the money for it.
right? Exactly.
You know, I'm also thinking if you want, I could give you we have a pretty good relationship with the representative that we've used. He could probably answer all these questions for you too. Like if you had anything that popped up, he's super friendly and like he really wants to try to find the best solution for us. So you might even have a recommendation and something to tweak in the contract or whatever. But helpful. We kind of pushed them off for like 6 months too, because we started this conversation a long time ago.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to try to rattle through these quickly. And of course, it's the end of December, so I had multiple department heads coming at me as late as 5:30 this afternoon to add items to the agenda. So if I miss something, please raise your hand and let me know so we can get this on here. The next item is a resolution authorizing the supervisor to sign 2 TWO, bad error on Janet's part, memorandums of agreement with the CSEA White Collar. In brief, one is to acknowledge a new position of senior accountant, which is the next item on the agenda, as well as adding engineering aid, engineering tech 1, engineering tech 2 to receive safety work boots under the collective bargaining agreement, because I feel like that's a no-brainer, right? It wasn't specifically in the contract. It specifically stated building inspectors, and we want to make sure those other folks in the field are protected. It's $150 per person. The next item is an authorization to purchase 6 ballistic vests and accessories to the tune of $7,177.32. And we're also going to add from the floor for that, finance approval for education reimbursement to the tune of $2,400 for Officer Breslin. The chief spoke about this at his commission meeting. This is something we've done before with Officer Breslin, and he's continuing education in mental health, right? So we need to call for a vote on that.
Do we
What was,
also need to vote for the best?
I think so.
And for the vests as well, yes, thank you.
Okay.
what was the amount for the tuition, Janet?
$2,400.
2,400.
And this is for stuff you already completed, I think, right? Yeah. No,
Yes.
it's upcoming.
Before.
Approve, and then you get reimbursed after the fact. Got it. Okay, so this 2,400 is just approving him to, okay. So we need a motion for the ballistic vests or a vote on that? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Do I need one for the
Yes, for Derek.
approval? And education reimbursement to the tune of $2,400 for Officer Breslin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Matt, we had a tentative resolution or tentative authorization to renew the annual software support for SCADA. Are we still carrying forward with that? Okay.
You're gonna have that, is that finance or resolution?
Res-
Do you have a dollar amount?
Can you say that again?
350850.
That's finance, then, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, we have a tentative authorization to repair the electrical panel. I'm sorry, we're going to remove item I, the authorization to repair the electrical panel at Valerie Drive. The repair came in less than requiring finance approval. Tentatively, an authorization to purchase a pump station control equipment.
Oh, okay.
It says authorization, but you think it's a, do you know how much it is?
Actually, I think it's only $3,000.
So that's, okay, authorization. So if the board could vote on that.
All in favor?
Aye.
You said you think it's $3,000. Is that an accurate amount? Because if we vote on it and it's more, then it's not gonna count.
I don't think it's close to that.
You want to go check? We'll try to throw it in at the end.
Okay, the next is an authorization to renew the annual bills for the EV charging stations. We had spoken to that earlier about the annual software license agreement, approval to pay. This would just be renewing the annual bill.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'm going to throw out there a couple of things. We have a resolution to appoint a parks supervisor. This is to more conform with civil service job descriptions. We have someone in a position that's doing this job. This is at no additional compensation. I want to stress that.
Mhm.
This appointment would be at no additional compensation, but would put a person who is doing the job specs, the civil service job specs for park supervisor, and give them the appropriate title. There's also a resolution to permanently appoint a real property clerk. This was very last minute. We had to interview several candidates for the position. And that the finalization literally hit at like 2 o'clock this afternoon. So I'm throwing it on there just to be done with it. It needs to be done with civil service by December 19th because we were canvassing off of a list.
Okay.
Question. I thought I heard permanently appoint. Is it appoint or permanently?
No, it's permanently appoint because it was a provisional position and now they've passed the civil service
Okay.
exam and they're reachable on the list.
What was the
Perfect.
title?
Real property.
Real property clerk. All right, and I think I skipped over, I'm going to go back up to F, a resolution to appoint a senior accountant effective January 1st, 2023.
I think we did that one.
Did we?
I think we
skipped
talked about
L.
it. Yeah, town logo.
Okay, so I did do, nobody has any questions about the senior accountant? That's in our office.
Frank?
That Frank,
Frank.
it's been budgeted for.
Yeah.
This is something I've truly believe in.
We love Frank.
And good old Frank.
Yeah.
And
Save-
finally, we have tentatively a resolution to adopt the town logo. I really hadn't had time to get feedback from where, you guys had a discussion the last time and I wasn't sure where we landed.
We met yesterday at
Go ahead, Bill.
3:30, between 3:30 and 4 o'clock. So we met with Marie and Dennis, who's here this evening, discussed the logo. We discussed many things. A very, very good meeting, very informative meeting, and sort of putting it to the board whether the board wants to go with it, what the committee has already put forward, or if we decide we want to get some more community input by possibly putting some other choices together as we discussed at a prior meeting, putting it in a mailer, which we would be doing with something else in the town. We got a price on that was $500 or $600, doing something like that. If the board wants to pursue that, it was the recommendation of Marie and Dennis, who were at the meeting, that if we do that, we would need to probably spend some more money on design. Their thought was the design group gave us a finished product with the logo that they recommended. And if we want to give choices to the community, that we would need to invest a little bit more money with them to make sure that it's apples to apples, right? We wouldn't want to put forth a draft, if you will, design
Sure.
of one particular logo when we have over here one that they did the final work on. So that was basically, right, the outcome from our meeting.
Yeah, I mean, like you had just said, I think one thing that Marie really stressed was, and I think it's important, is that the final design that the work group brought forward was a final design, like Bill just said. So if we look back at the previous 12 designs or the previous 20 something designs that we had, none of them are finalized. We're going to have to go back to the designers and almost essentially start from scratch with those designs to get them to finalize it with color and font style and shape. And I don't think it's as simple as just taking 3 designs and putting it on a mailer and sending it out. I think there's a lot more time and money that would have to go into it to get those 3 designs to where they need to be for a public vote.
And I think we have 3,000 in that line. I don't know if that would cover it. I'm not sure how much that would cost.
Well, I think the idea originally was probably for that 3,000 to go towards the implementation.
It was.
So if we did vote on this specific design that is in
And we
front of
can
us
use
right
that
now,
for that.
we'd have that 3,000 to do letterhead, do flags, whatever the case may be. So, I mean, I do think that it would be far over $3,000 to have the designers finalize 2 more designs. I mean, Dennis is here, and Dennis, you probably have a better idea of that than I would maybe, but I think it would be far over $3,000 to have 2 more designs finalized.
I was surprised we got one for $3,000.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's a lot of work.
I'm in favor of going forward with the committee's recommendation.
Jason, so you said there might be like 12 designs that haven't been finished? That like,
So-
like they're drafted, but they haven't been like colored and,
Yeah, so I think, so we had 12 designs at one point, but Bill and I were looking at those 12 designs, and I guess it's not really 12 designs, it's
Iteration.
different designs, yeah, but of the same idea. So like we had maybe
Where
6 or
it's down
7.
about 3, right?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
we had-
those, that's what you're talking about?
we
Yeah,
had
they're all
6 or
basic.
7 designs that involved the heron. We had maybe 2 designs or 3 designs that had more of a community theme. So even though it's 12 designs, it's maybe only really 3 different
I know what you're talking about. If we go back even further, you said there might be one with like 50.
Well, I think we started out with 56 or 52. Yeah.
Could we take a few of those and look at those? And then instead of starting from scratch, we start from like there and add the color and add the,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that any of them are really, I think we made so many minor changes and tweaks here and there. So even though we started with those 52 or 56, over time, it ended up at the same, you know, I mean, like they all sort of funneled into one design
right.
based on the tweaks that we were making and the stories that we were learning and the information we were learning. One major goal was for the image to tell a story, to sort of paint a picture. So all of the little changes we made to sort of funnel into this one design was part of that story. Another thing that we talked about at our meeting yesterday was the educational piece behind this. So throughout the research that the work group did and the outreach, there was so much information that this image tells, or the story that it tells. So I think that comes into the education phase, which would be after the town board adopts a logo, to sort of tell the story behind the image and why we chose that in the education of explaining the imagery. I think that's another huge phase that we haven't even gotten to yet.
So we did talk at length about different things, and Marie shared with us, and I found this very interesting, that there are some municipalities that could not do it. Tried to change your logo, tried to get a logo.
We promised her that wouldn't be us.
No, we promised her that would not be us, but they couldn't do it. They couldn't get it done. They couldn't get a consensus. They couldn't get it done. And I sort of shared with her that, you know, you see what a lot of school districts are doing now with changing their mascots and their names, right? From Warriors to whatever, from, you know, Sabres to Storm, that kind of thing. And I guess in what I've seen with that is most of that is that they've, you know, given their community members 3 choices and tried to get the community to sort of, okay, here's 3, pick one, and they went with whatever that outcome was. I thought that might be a good model for us to use, but that's just my personal opinion.
I like that model. And I think there, like, I agree with Jason, there's like this educational phase. And if you hear, when you hear her talk, you hear all of the things that you wouldn't know unless you were taught it.
Right.
But I feel like part of a logo should be like, this is our town. You shouldn't have to know like 20 facts about why there's blue in a circle and a hair, you know, like it's fascinating and it's really important, but it doesn't say Niskayuna necessarily. It says like a lot of things that no one can really comprehend unless you're specifically taught.
So here's where I'm at with all of this. And I'm just going to say the things out loud that we are like just dancing around a little bit. I've had a lot of conversations with residents about their feeling as though we don't communicate well with them. We don't receive communication well. We don't deliver communication well. And so that part of my brain is saying, well, we really should get some more community input because we really only have this small logo group. You know, it was established a number of years ago. You know, maybe that's not incorporating all of the community, as much of the community as we could. Granted, they did do a whole lot of outreach and did a whole lot of surveying. I was like incredibly impressed with their surveying. And so then there's that piece of it. So that's part of it. The other part of it is that people who've lived here, such as myself, all of their lives, don't necessarily have an attachment to a heron, don't necessarily have an attachment even to the history. And I don't say that in a bad way. It just means we don't really talk about it. If we, and everyone in this room can say the same thing, if there's one thing that comes up when people think of what does Niskayuna mean, what is everyone going to say? Corn. I'm not kidding you. That is everybody's answer.
I know,
Which
but
we
we
had
had it.
discussed more at length yesterday about how it's sort of incorrect.
Yes.
And
discussed
how
that
that can have a negative sort of tone, if you will, to the indigenous people. This is stuff that I didn't know. Marie, Dennis could extrapolate on that, share with
Yes.
us about that. So,
And then
and some of the, that was one of the 12. Corn was one of the major
Designs.
themes, and Marie actually wanted that. She liked that, but then when you sort of
dig a little
little
deeper.
bit deeper.
Yes.
You dig a little bit deeper.
now here's
So
the
this is this is why we got a committee, and this is why the committee did all this study. and
that's what I
this
was
is why
gonna
the
say.
committee did these surveys, and this is why they came up with the logo that we have now, that we are continuing to talk about ad nauseum.
That is the other side of
So-
my brain that's saying, are we spending a bit too much time on this because we've got some serious problems here that we need to address, and we're spending a heck of a lot of meeting time, and in this case, more money on a logo. I can see both sides of it. I think that no matter what we come up with, whether we pass it now or we come up with more iterations, we're still going to have people who are miserable about it, upset about it, and I'm not sure that we're going to be able to avoid that. So if it's all right with you guys, I'd kind of like to just think through whether or not to put the resolution on there. And maybe we can make that decision a little, and sometime before tomorrow, the end of the day.
I do,
Whether or
think-
not.
and one thing we said yesterday during the meeting was whether we decide to move forward with it this month or we decide to start from scratch, whatever we decide, I think it's time that we decide.
We have to
Because,
move,
I mean-
yeah, because we have to move.
But we're going to get this done.
We've been working-
We're gonna get it done.
We're going to get it, we're going to do it. And because the one that we have on the pins and whatever, it's not correct. And Dennis and I talked about this. It's our duty to make it right. Okay? You can't just say, well, I'm not going to make it, I'm not going to fix it. It's our duty to make it right. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to fix it.
Well, so we're gonna have a resolution then for the next meeting to vote on yes or no.
Well, it's not a yes or no. It's
Sure
whether
it is.
people want
It
to
is
stop the
surveys.
process now, or we want to continue the process and get more input from the community. That's really the question. Do we
Well, we'll
want to
have-
stop the
we'll-
process where you are now, or do you want to go forward with the other model, as I discussed, giving choices, putting it in a mailer and getting the information back, and then that's the end.
So we'll vote on that at the next meeting. That's the best way to do it, right?
Give us a little time to think, but with the understanding that we are making a choice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so move on from that.
All right, so I have two quick final items for finance because I know multiple department heads are going to be adding from the floor for agenda as well. Elena, in response to your question about the authorization to purchase pump station control equipment, it is not to exceed $5,000.
So we need approval?
Yes.
Okay, this was for the
Item
pump
J.
station control equipment, not to exceed $5,000. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the last item we have is also an item added from the floor, and I'll ask the supervisor to speak to it. It's finance authorization to use interest from the repair reserve accounts for projects specific to Sewer 1, Sewer 6, and Water 1. So these are repair reserve accounts that we have hanging out there that we've made a substantial amount of interest on. And we believe that the law allows for us to utilize the interest to help pay for some of the expenses in those special districts. It would leave the principal untouched.
Still be repairs, but it won't. So here's why we're doing this. We did not budget, obviously, for a rate study to the tune of $30,000. So we're doing a bit of shuffling. We made a lot of money on these reserve accounts that just sit there accruing interest. And we don't necessarily need a public hearing to use the interest. We would if we were going to use the principal. Principal will stay the same. But it's a way for us to pay for things that are repairs. I mean, I feel like that's so much of the budget anyway, but are repairs. And then we can free up a little bit of that budget money to pay for the rate study. That's the rationale. So that's like a resolution though, isn't it? Well, so I put it out here because it's a weird thing. Like this whole interest use, the reserve account itself, I think is a very weird thing that we don't touch it often. We don't, well, like this year we have some money that's going to be going into it for 25, but it's kind of the extent to us talking about it. I don't think it's been used in a number of years and the money's been sitting there accruing in some nice interest. So right now it would just be more of a discussion point so that you know when we're paying for the rate study and for some repairs that are going to go on resolution for Matt, this is where the money would be coming from. It's more just like making sure you guys know where it's coming from.
We would essentially be using interest that we earned to pay for the rate study without touching.
Well, that we would use the interest to pay for repairs that we would otherwise paid for out of the two sewer budgets and the water budget,
Okay.
and free up those funds to pay for the water study so we don't have to dip into fund balance.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Hopefully. Okay.
It does.
It keeps us from having to pull it out of next year's budget too. I just get it paid for. Yeah, so that's really just a discussion item because it's going to have to be two, maybe three. Do we have, you have it written up as two? That's like a tentative resolution, right? Okay, why don't we talk about it in the context of having a tentative resolution for those repairs and with the understanding that the repairs would be paid for from the interest funds? Can you just tell them what those repairs are? I know you told me what they were, the ones that have to be done this year.
So the repairs that I would be looking to use, a portion of that interest money would be, let's see. It would be, I have it as on for a resolution to repair a thermal fluid pump at the wastewater plant.
So Matt, to clarify, these are resolutions that you're adding for this month then?
They were
Yeah,
already
they would
on,
need to
they
be.
went through committee already.
Oh, they did?
Are they
Yeah.
on
Are
the
they on this
agenda?
list?
Yeah, it's H.
They're on.
Is it H? Okay, so
The
it's the
finance.
two that are on here.
H.
There's
is-
2 or 3 that are on here, yeah.
Okay, oh my gosh, all right, so
I'm
great.
not seeing thermal on here.
So that's the pump station control equipment or no?
No, they're on the,
Oh, in your section,
on my
in Public
section down the
Works.
bottom, at the bottom
Okay,
there, yeah.
perfect,
yeah.
they're already on there then.
Yep.
I thought we were adding them for
No,
today.
No, I have 2 other,
Perfect, so the
others.
only thing was a discussion item to tell you where the money was coming from.
Oh, we're talking about the agenda now.
they're on the
Yes.
agenda.
The other
yeah.
items that you add, you're going to add from the agenda meeting,
Yeah,
at
Yes,
the agenda meeting.
okay, perfect, they're already on here,
Yeah.
good to go.
sorry.
So that's all we have. Did I miss anything from any of you that came up to me today or at the last minute here at the table?
I have one
Nothing.
minor discussion point. I would like to stop printing out full packets for everybody. Does everyone have access to a tablet or a computer that they could bring to review things during our meetings so that I'm not wasting so much paper?
I do paper copies, but
I will print one for you.
thank you.
I'd like,
But it just,
I'd like paper. I make my notes on it. I'm
But
sorry.
tell me if you want paper
I do.
or
I'm just very
I'm
upset.
saying I would rather you bring a tablet or a laptop to review the backup, not the agenda, but like the backup. Because some of them get to be like 100, 120
Can we
pages.
just put some of those 50 workstations up here?
There you go, pull them out of the basement. So we talked about at one point getting tablets so we weren't spending so much paper, but that kind of fell apart a few years ago. And I was thinking to myself, why are we printing all of this out? Sometimes it's really relevant, other times we're barely looking at it.
So
So
you're
I
just
just-
speaking about the contracts that might be.
Yeah,
behind
just the backup,
something.
just the backup.
So
I
that
obviously
backup
use-
goes
I
out.
obviously use all of those and people
This
come
would
to
be
me looking
more-
for stuff all the time, so I still want paper.
And I would have to print them out for Michelle Martinelli, but if we can cut down on even
Some of-
3 of the packets, that saves us paper and ink.
The backup goes out with the finance agenda. So everything that you guys are getting in the packet, if you're reading the finance agenda that we send out, that backup is all, what we have is there.
Yeah.
You know, this
But
last
you're
one,
not-
there were a couple of things that were last minute that I didn't
You're
have
not just
backup.
talking
Look at
about
that
finance.
contract.
though.
No, we're talking about, I'm talking about every meeting where we have hundreds of pages. I know sometimes I email you and say, please don't make me print this out. And you guys are really good about it. But I'm thinking if we just have our agendas here and we have something to reference, and I understand if that's mentally an easier way for you to work, great. But if there's some of you that can do it without a full packet, tell me and bring maybe your iPad or something with you that you can easily scroll through. I just feel like in the spirit of cutting wherever we can. It's like, and it's so hard to look at all that paper just go in the garbage. Anyway, so
Can you
that was
just-
just more of a discussion piece.
If a final packet is emailed to us a couple hours before the meeting, then I mean. we'll
It's
have that
usually pretty dead on.
Usually,
I
yeah,
don't
like, if
think,
there's any changes.
Friday, yeah. but
Yeah.
Well, even after Friday, if there's
Oh, if there's
changes, I
changes,
usually,
She sends
I
an
usually
update.
update and
The
send it
update,
out.
yeah.
and like, let's say you forget your computer, just tell me and I'll print a packet out for you. But I'm saying if in general, we could cut back on it, be
I'm okay with that.
Cool.
I have my iPad.
cool. And then, yes,
And,
Elena's like, I'm going to murder you after
And
this
this one
meeting.
without it.
Okay. All right, good. I think that's it.
okay, motion to adjourn.
We're good. We can go through all of this at agenda.
I thought, that's what my understanding, right, is anybody's adding from the floor on agenda.
Good. Okay, so I'll take a motion to close the finance meeting.
Motion to close finance.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And we're going to give like 2-minute buffer to start the agenda meeting so we can get the feed switched out.